In 1981, the golden age of arcades were among us, and right smack in the middle was a little game called Frogger. What real-life occurrence inspired this classic arcade game? So watch out for the cards and hop on that lily pad. This is the history of Frogger. In early 1981, Akira Hashimoto was sitting at a traffic light when something caught his eye. He noticed a frog attempting to cross the road but was having trouble navigating through all the vehicles. He pulled his car safely over and helped the little frog. This is what sparked the idea for Frogger. Developed by Konami and distributed by Sega, Frogger sees you take control of an unnamed frog as he weaves in and out of traffic while crossing logs to make it to his home. There are cars, bulldozers, race cars, dune buggies, motorcycles, trucks, and buses, all with varying speeds. Once you get across the road, you come to a river where you have to hop across turtles and logs. Certain turtles will go underwater, so if you do hitch a ride, make sure you get off as soon as possible. Let me just say that either this takes place in an alternate dimension, or the frog is just straight up drunk, because for some reason if he touches water, he dies. Occasionally, you will see a frog stranded and can give him a ride back to his home. In later levels, alligators are in the water and you can jump on these but stay away from their mouths. There are also snakes and otters to contend with in later levels. If you eat the fly that is hanging out in your home, you will get a nice bonus. Once all 5 spots are filled at the top, the level repeats with the difficulty increased. This was one of the first arcade games to use dual Z80 processors. This is also one of the first games to offer the most ways to die, with the grand total being 9. Death scenes include being run over, jumping into the water, death by otter, death by snake, and the dreaded diving turtle. In my opinion, one of the most memorable aspects of the game has to be the music. The opening song is from a Japanese nursery rhyme called The Doggy Policeman. Other tracks include Yankee Doodle, Camptown Races, and songs from various Japanese anime. Frogger was one of the first games to bring in the female audience. They loved the simplistic controls and found it very easy to pick up. This was released a full year before Miss Pac-Man. I've always wondered what came first, the chicken or the Frogger. In 1981, Activision released Freeway for the Atari 2600. This was designed by legendary programmer David Crane, which sees you guide a chicken across a busy freeway. As you can see, the similarities are very apparent. According to Mr. Crane, though, the game was developed 6,000 miles apart in a secure facility at roughly the same time. So, believe it or not, it was purely a coincidence. The original title of the game was Highway Crossing Frog. Thankfully, though, Sega stepped in and changed it at just the last minute. The game was a monster success, and with it came all of the merchandising. There were t-shirts, a board game which represented the game very well. There was even a digital watch that let you play a game of Frogger. The Pac-Man Fever album by Buckner and Garcia was a huge success, and on it was a little song called Froggy's Lament. Now I can't play it for you, otherwise I'll get a copyright strike, but go out and Google it if you're curious. Frogger even appeared on CBS's Saturday Supercade, which played host to a wide variety of other arcade properties. Donkey Kong, Dragon's Lair, Q*bert, and Pitfall. One of my favorite pieces of merchandise was the Coleco tabletop arcade game. Coleco ended up releasing 8 other mini arcade games, but this was by far the best conversion. As soon as this game was released, the clones started appearing out of the woodwork. Similar to Pac-Man and Donkey Kong, this was one of the most widely copied games back in the day. Parker Brothers acquired the rights for all home cartridge releases. What the contract did not state was the license to release the game on diskette or tape, which is when Sierra Online stepped in. Along with the license, we get another classic Parker Brothers Atari 2600 commercial.
This is the new Frogger home video game. Ribbit. It's just like the arcade game. Very lifelike. Ribbit. See, you have to hop Frogger past these cars and trucks. Missed. Ribbit. Past the snakes, onto the logs. Oh, and the alligators in the river. Ribbit, ribbit. And back home to his lily pad. Whew. Frogger is absolutely riveting. The new Frogger home video game. Bring it back to your pad.
Sega's arcade game, now a home video game from Parker Brothers, the ones to beat.
The Odyssey 2 version is up first, which is pretty good in my opinion. This game does not scroll and uses 2 screens representing one for the traffic and one for the river. There is no music while you're playing, but there is a nice tune at the very beginning. Fast speed and good controls. The Color Computer or TRS-80 version is up next. The gameplay of Frogger shouldn't be that hard to replicate. Once you get that stroke down, guiding your little frog to safety should become second nature. Speaking of stroke, I felt like I was having one when I was playing this version. My eyes and ears were bleeding from both the audio and graphics, which is a first in my case. I would avoid this if I were you. The Atari 2600 version is the one I had when I was a kid, and it was a pretty good rendition. Again though, there is no music while you are playing, but the controls are nice and tight, and the speed is very good. The Atari received another home port in 1984 thanks to the StarPath Supercharger. For those of you who don't know, this is an expansion module that allows you to play cassette games with more memory and higher resolution graphics. This version of Frogger leaps and bounds above the standard 2600 version. Not only are the graphics better, we get music while we play. Life is good. In the graphics department, the Intellivision version is very well done. I absolutely hate the controllers though, but it doesn't really hinder the gameplay too much. The sound is another story. I would rather listen to William Hung sing Christmas carols all day long than listen to this.
Thank you.
Every time you guide your little frog home, it sounds like you're letting out a short, angry fart. The DOS version is up next, and while it's only 4-color CGA graphics, the game plays well and is fast. It uses the horrible PC speaker for sound, but at least there is music while you are playing. The Atari 5200 version has very nice colors and large detailed sprites, music while we play, and nice controls. As far as music goes, the ColecoVision is the best in my opinion. I had this one as well growing up and have fond memories of this game. Graphics are nice, but not quite as detailed as the 5200 version. Controls are very good. My trusty Commodore 64 version is an okay conversion. The graphics seem a bit bland and uninspired though. It does control good. Konami released a version for the MSX computer. While the graphics are large, the sound is horrendous. The speed is good and controls well enough. The game was released in 1998 for the Sega Genesis. It was the very last American release for this system, but it was also the most faithful to the arcade game. The sound, graphics, and controls are almost arcade perfect. All licensed versions of the game after the 1998 Sega Genesis release had the music changed due to varying copyright infringements. Also released in 1998 was the Super Nintendo version. This is also the last game released for this system. The game features updated graphics and sounds and plays exactly like Frogger. While there was never an official arcade sequel to Frogger, the closest we got was from Parker Brothers, and that was Frogger 2 3D. Konami did not have any involvement with this release. The gameplay is very similar to the first one, but is split into 3 different screens. The first one, you avoid sea creatures. The second one, you have to cross a lake, and the final one takes place in the sky. The game is fun in short bursts, but does not have the charm of the original. There have been countless sequels, spin-offs, and reboots over the past 35 years. This would be a 9-part video if I went over every version, so I'll just pick out one of my favorites. In 1997, Hasbro released Frogger, or Frogger He's Back, for the PS1 and PC. The graphics have been given a nice 3D effect, but the gameplay remains the same. The game is expanded though, with bigger and longer levels and more things to do. In 1998, in a classic Seinfeld episode, George discovers that the Frogger machine at the local pizza place still has his high score. Unfortunately, the place is going out of business, so his score and initials will be lost forever. He hires a few friends of Kramer to rig up a battery and buys the machine to preserve it forever. He ends up playing a real-life game of Frogger with this machine as he attempts to cross the road. On a side note, it was not even possible to input your initials into the real arcade game. Experts on Frogger like myself sat back and laughed and laughed. In 2012, Wreck-It Ralph was released, and among the millions of video game cameos, Frogger was among them. It's hard to state exactly how huge Frogger was back in the day. While it doesn't have the same recognition as Pac-Man or Donkey Kong, it remains at the top of a lot of Golden Age arcade gamers' lists. It's the simplistic gameplay that lures people in, but it's also the simplistic gameplay that keeps people coming back year after year. It's one of those games that says, "One more time," after you lose your last life. Thank you for watching my video. If you'd like to support me, please visit me on Patreon. Also, leave me some feedback on whether or not you liked or disliked my video. It's the only way my small channel can grow. Thanks for watching.